Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
A husband decides to fulfill his wife's last wish, but in the process he learns something he shouldn't. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy it! As the sun disappeared into the distance, a tear rolled down my cheek. I smiled, thinking about how cool it was to watch the sunset from this vantage point for the first time. No matter how many times you've seen it, there's something special about watching the sunset from the back deck of a cruise ship. Catherine liked it. I think it was only fitting that this would be one of those places where she would want a part of herself to remain forever. Catherine was the love of my life, and I seriously doubted that I would ever find someone like her again, even though I supposedly had many years to try. She left a hole in my heart of a certain size and shape that would be difficult, if not impossible, to fill. As I contemplated the task before me, the hum of the ship's powerful engines, as we moved inexorably toward the next port, was almost musical. This would be difficult for a man of any age, but at 31, it was even more challenging. Moreover, she was the very first and only significant love of my life. I thought about her, and it immediately brought a smile to my face. For some reason, I could never feel sad when I thought about Kat. This gave me the courage to reach into my jacket and pull out the small anodized aluminum container that this trip was all about. "I love you, Kat," I said. Then a light breeze blew, sending salt spray over me. I unscrewed the top but couldn't go any further. There was a giant lump in my throat. Suddenly, my legs could barely support me. For a second, I almost put the lid back on the container, but two hands grabbed it, giving me extra support. "You can do it, Dad," my son said. This is what she wanted. "I know," I told him, "but it feels like I'm pouring it out or throwing it away. This feels simply wrong. I feel like I should keep it to myself." I cried like a child. Tears flowed freely from my eyes down my cheeks, leaving small marks on my shirt. "What would you do instead?" Dad asked. "Keep it in an urn on your robe?" He looked at me with sympathy in his eyes. "We both know this is not what my mother wanted. I understand perfectly how you feel. You need some physical part of her that you can touch or see in order to hold on to her. I knew you would do it, Dad, so I only cheated a little." He handed me a gold chain with a glass pendant. "There's a tiny piece of her here that you can keep forever," he smiled. "My name is Raymond Jordan. When this all started, I was 20 years old and in my third year of a 4-year architecture program. I sat back in the big comfy chair in my dorm room. She said, smiling at me, "I need a favor." Why the hell did she do this to me? If it wasn't just cruelty, she already knew that I would probably do whatever she asked. Catherine, like me, was 20 years old. While I was an ordinary 20-year-old guy, she was a dream come true. She had long blonde hair that reached the middle of her back, the clearest blue eyes you'd ever seen. She was 5 feet 8 inches tall and had the perfect body. She was slim, but everything about her was perfect for her size. Neither I nor any breathing man could refuse her anything. I know this is our 6-month anniversary, and it's a really big day for us in the short term, but in the long run, it's not that important. When we're married and have children, we won't even remember today anyway. I know you wanted to celebrate a little and go out, but baby, if I don't meet with my study group tonight, I won't pass my final exam in economics," she said. I knew she was having trouble with this class and was just hoping for a C. "So, honey," I said, "go to your study group. We'll celebrate another evening." Where were we? It's not a favor," she said. "Remember I told you about my grandmother?" My spidey senses were off the charts. "Well, she came to town today," she said. "She's here, and I told her that you and I would go with her to what she was doing, but since I really need to study, I was hoping that you could take it from me." She looked at me with puppy dog eyes and pouted. I still can't believe I was stupid enough to agree to this. One way or another, 2 hours later, I found myself on the porch of her parents' house. I was very angry, but I tried to hide it. I knocked on the door, wearing the only suit I owned. In my heart of hearts, I hoped that Grandma would take one look at me, know that Catherine wasn't coming, and cancel the appointment. I decided there were only a few things I wouldn't accept. Number 1, under no circumstances would I accept an old bag drooling all over me. Number 2, petting is not allowed. I heard that many of these older women sometimes act playfully with younger guys. There would be no need to hold my hand and pretend like we were an item. Those older ladies used to do this to make all the other ladies think something was going on with them. This was just a one-time thing to help Catherine, and I had my own rules about it. I hoped the older lady wouldn't talk too much or look overly done up with makeup. I really hoped I wouldn't have to assist her with walking or, worse, with her walker or wheelchair. Mona, Catherine's mother, whom I had met many times, opened the door and invited me inside. "Thanks so much for agreeing, Ree," she grinned. I always thought Mona didn't like me. She spoke to me as if she knew something I didn't, like I was part of a big joke. But she talked to her husband in the same tone, so I accepted it as her way of communicating. It didn't bother me anymore because I found her amusing. Have you ever met a parent who seems to dislike you, no matter how hard you try to impress them? Mona's attitude didn't annoy me anymore because I had the perfect comeback in my mind whenever she looked at me or talked down to me. "It doesn't matter what you think because I care deeply for your daughter." She'd look at me when I showed up at a party and didn't like my outfit. "She'll be down soon," Mona grinned, looking at my suit and pursing her lips. I simply smiled back at her, replaying my thoughts in my head. On the other hand, Catherine's father was a great guy. We got along really well, and I liked him. "Sorry to keep you waiting," said a very melodious voice behind me. I prepared to be polite to my grandmother and turned around with a fake smile on my face, which turned genuine when I saw her. She was probably the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Petite but curvy, she was about 5 feet 1 inch or 5 feet 2 inches tall, with blonde hair, the same shade as Catherine's, only shorter and with a lovely wave. Everything about her seemed vibrant. Her hair flowed freely, shimmering with every movement, and her eyes were a striking green, full of life. Only small crow's feet at the corners of her eyes hinted at her age. She radiated joy, her body beautifully sculpted, with a thin waist that enhanced her natural curves. Catherine's grandmother had a warm and inviting presence. "I'm Catherine," she said, smiling. I almost stumbled over my words, which made her laugh again. "KK, Catherine," I muttered, trying to be original. She grinned at me, and I could feel her energy radiating off her. "Of course you can call me Grandma since you'll probably be marrying my namesake. Come on, we better get going, we don't want to be late." As soon as we went outside, she took my arm and leaned against me, and I caught a light floral aroma that nearly took my breath away. "We can go in my car if you want," she said, pointing to the sleek silver-gray Jaguar. She handed me the keys, and I forgot about my old Chevy. This Jaguar was a dream on wheels. True, it was a rented car. She always rented it because it was the same model she had at home, making her feel more at ease. We attended a concert of the local symphony orchestra, featuring several works by Mozart with guest conductors and soloists. I had never been into classical music, but I must admit I enjoyed it, as did Catherine. We chatted during intermission, and she introduced me to several of her friends as her date. I had no objections and, hesitantly, put my arm around her shoulders. She didn't seem to mind. "I wish you had done this sooner," she said, "it's really cold in here." The gentleman in me took over, and I draped my jacket over her shoulders. The look she gave me was worth $1 million. I felt a bit embarrassed. "My granddaughter's taste in men has certainly improved," she whispered to me during the second half of the concert, and I couldn't help but smile. She constantly whispered to me, earning several annoyed looks from others, which she simply returned with a smile. "We should go get some ice cream when this is all over," she suggested, and I nodded, wishing the night wouldn't end. During the last piece of the evening, her favorite, she took my hand and held it tightly. I would never be able to hear a little night music again without remembering that night. Afterward, we headed to her favorite ice cream shop. I thought it would be some kind of small shop, but we headed to the waterfront and stopped at Cold Stone Creamery. We sat on the grass and enjoyed our ice cream while watching the big ships slowly sail past us under the stars. "Ree," she said, "I had a great time tonight, and to think I was about to get rid of you." She started laughing again after saying that. "Don't look at me like that," she continued. "You just don't understand the situation. My family is a bit quirky. First of all, I have 3 sons, all married, and they're all worried about poor old Grandma. They don't want me to get hurt or into trouble. So sometimes, they pass me off to someone else. I imagine I interrupted. I think they're a bit jealous of you. What are you talking about, Ree? She smiled. Nothing, I said sheepishly. This woman made me feel as modest as a schoolgirl. One way or another, I often ended up with Catherine or one of her cousins. This time, when I found out that even my granddaughter was passing me off, I felt a little upset, but from my point of view, everything turned out very well. I don't remember the last time I had such a good time, she said. Thank you. Is it really over already? I asked. What do you mean? She asked, smiling slightly. Well, do you want to go dancing? I suggested. Oh, she exclaimed, I haven't danced in a very long time, but these shoes aren't suitable for that. I'll probably end up falling over. I wouldn't mind that, I said quickly. She smiled again. This woman could easily capture me with just a smile. Wait, we're not very far from Kat's apartment. I'll just borrow her shoes, she said. She's not at home, I replied. She's studying with her group. Well, you don't have a key to her apartment, she asked. She has the key to your dorm room, I replied. Well, I guess not, she said. Why not? She pressed. Well, it doesn't matter, I said. In fact, we were only 8 blocks from Catherine's apartment. Isn't it confusing that you're both named Catherine? I asked. No, she smiled. In the family, I'm Cat, and she's Cat. The ride in the Jaguar was so smooth that it almost took away from the moment. There's something to be said about a stylish, well-made car that simply cannot be overstated. We took the elevator to Catherine's apartment. I told Kat that I couldn't help her much in finding the shoes she wanted because all I knew about women's shoes was that they were smaller than men's shoes and more expensive. We weren't particularly quiet when we opened the door to the apartment, but since they didn't hear us, it didn't matter much. The door to Catherine's apartment faced her bedroom. There, on the bed, my Catherine was with 3 guys I had never seen before. As soon as one of the guys turned his head and our eyes met, I simply waved and closed the door. Kat looked at me and said, I guess I'll have to dance in these shoes, huh? I nodded slowly. Kat, I began, unsure of what to say. No way, Raymond Jordan, she said. You asked me to the dance, so you must keep your word. Let's go. We returned to the car, and I drove toward the club like a piece of wood, my mind elsewhere. Ree, sometimes life throws some really difficult things at you, she said. Stronger people learn to compartmentalize all those little issues and keep them separate. Yes, my granddaughter is making some questionable choices that affect you, and you have to decide how to handle it. But remember, life is very short. When you're my age, you'll realize that no one ever leaves this world thinking they had too much fun. They always wish they had done more. Regardless of whether you break up with my granddaughter or not, it has nothing to do with us going to the dance. She held out her hand in the car, and I took it. Let's dance, I said. The rest of the way, Kat continued to sing and chuckle a little. Are you laughing at me? I asked. I guess I'm some kind of sucker, she replied. No, sweetie, she said. You just told me she was studying. You were almost right. We danced until they kicked us out. The music was loud, and as Kat suggested, I tried to put all my pain and resentment regarding Catherine into a box in my mind and forget about it until I needed to deal with it. Kat quickly realized that dancing today was very different from what it had been years ago. You haven't learned how to dance certain styles, practice them, and finally perform them, you just get out on the floor and move to the music as you feel. Kat had the confidence to dance and received many compliments. She refused to dance with anyone but me. I don't think anyone in the dimly lit club knew how old she was except for me, and I didn't care. Several of my friends came up to me and told me that they had seen me there. I knew that some of them would probably report to Catherine that they had seen me. As I drove her home, Kat hugged me as tenderly as she ever had on her son's doorstep. She laughed at my embarrassment. I probably won't become your grandmother, will I? She asked. Probably not, I said, but I really enjoyed tonight. You are a special woman. Okay, she said, but I'd still be a terrible grandmother to you. I'll talk to you soon. I was too busy with my growing unhappiness to even process what she said. I climbed into my truck and drove back to the hostel, missing the smooth ride of the Jaguar all the way. When I got to the hostel, I noticed the message light on my phone was blinking. I looked at the screen and saw that I had a couple of messages from my Catherine. I listened to the first one, hoping she would tell me about a group of guys who pilled her with something and took advantage of her. There was no such luck. "Hi, dude. I just wanted to thank you for looking after my old grandma. I hope she wasn't in too much trouble. I love you so much, and I will do all this for you. I feel much better about myself after today's class. I'm sure that with a few more classes like today, I'll get a C, call me." Then I remembered where I had seen the guy she was with. He was a teacher in her economics class. The second message was even more foolish. I thought maybe this guy told her he saw us, but then I considered that if I had some attractive girl, would I tell her that her boyfriend was watching? If I didn't have my turn, maybe not. I could tell from the message that she still didn't know, but I was sure that the guy was laughing at me for a little while. "Hi, honey. I'm surprised you're not home yet. The concert was supposed to end by 10. I hope she didn't force you to go eat with her or anything like that. I'm tired of all this. I'm going to sleep. I'll meet you tomorrow for lunch, and we'll catch up tomorrow night." She must think I'm the dumbest idiot, I thought, sitting there. I wondered how long she had been doing this. Moreover, I wondered why we weren't married. Hell, we weren't even officially engaged. I didn't call her and ask her to become my wife. It's true that I spent a lot of time with her family, and she told them that I was the man she would marry. It was weird. We had dinner with her mom and dad, as well as one of her uncles and his wife. She told them that she was going to marry me and that we would have a marriage like her mom and dad's. Her mother had an arrogant grin on her face, her father wore a sweet smile, but her uncle's wife almost spat her food onto the table. My uncle just looked at me with the "you poor man" expression. I chalked it up to the family's oddities. I was grateful to Kat for teaching me her philosophy. I used it many times in those early days. The day after I caught Kat, both my cell phone and the dorm phone were ringing nonstop. I didn't answer the calls. She left numerous messages trying to figure out where I was and what was going on. I didn't think about her. It was much easier than I thought. I just put it in a box in my mind and set that box away. By lunchtime, she came to see me. I was conveniently in the library. A friend in the next room warned me when I finished my studies. I sat in the park in front of my building and waited for her car to leave. Then I called the receptionist and asked to change the lock on my room. I tried to predict her every move and blocked everything. By the end of our first day apart, she had no idea what was happening or why. As far as she knew, everything was fine. I have to admit, I was starting to like it. I was sitting by my bed reading, and every time the phone rang, I looked at the caller ID. If it was Kat's number or her parents' house, I just smiled and let the call go to voicemail. She almost caught me once. My lock had not been changed yet, and around 7 p.m., I heard the key in the lock. I ducked into my filthy closet and buried myself under a pile of laundry. Staying there and smelling my own scent for a few minutes made me decide it was time to visit the laundromat very soon, but it prevented the need to meet her. I almost laughed when she stood just inches away from me and started talking to herself. "Where are you?" she asked. She checked her call log and saw that I hadn't received any of today's messages yet. Then she turned and left my room. Soon after, the phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar area code, so I realized that this was not our local area. I answered carefully. "So, you're depressed and heartbroken?" asked a very musical voice. "No," I replied. A very wise and beautiful woman taught me how to deal with such situations. Life is too short not to have fun. "So, how are you coping?" My granddaughter asked me a little earlier about last night. I didn't mention what we saw. I just put it in a box and put that box away, I said. "I'll deal with her when the time comes." She said, "Do you want me to decide this for you?" "No, I'm fine," I said. "Oh, poor thing," she sighed. "I've decided I want to be your grandmother." "Why don't you just be my friend?" I asked. "It's agreed," she said warmly. "Meet me at Cold Stone in an hour." Then she hung up. I met Kat at the same ice cream shop we went to the night before. We sat on the grass by the river again and watched the boats go by, but this time everything was different. For starters, instead of a tight little dress, Kat was wearing jeans. I couldn't help but stare at her every chance I got. It just didn't seem possible that she was anyone's grandmother. Jeans are a test that most women should avoid. There are no secrets in jeans. If a woman has wide hips, jeans take notice. If her butt is flat or uneven, or shapeless, jeans will highlight it. Jeans expose all the flaws of a woman's lower body. Men can wear these jeans because the current fashion is to wear pants so loose and baggy that the contours of a man's body cannot be discerned. This doesn't work for women. Kat in jeans was a gift from heaven. She looked better in jeans than her granddaughter. The light sweater she wore today showed how her chest was bursting from her ribs. She suddenly put down her ice cream and took off her thigh-length leather jacket. "That's better," she said. "What?" I asked, confused. "I was worried about your neck," she laughed. I started to say something but changed my mind. "Thank you," I said. "Kat and I were talking about going to Hawaii for a week or two." "Wow, this should be fun for her start to summer vacation," I said. "I hope you have a good time." "No matter how she does, she'd probably have more fun if she didn't come with me," Kat said. "I'm sure she'd rather be there with you." "Oh yes," I said, "so I can hold her stuff while she has a night with other guys." "Honey, you're lucky," she said. "You found out about her before it was too late. Not everyone has that luck." Kat was hinting at something, and I wasn't sure if it was all about me and Kat. "How about you go to Hawaii?" she asked. "Well, first of all, I need to find a summer job," I said, "and secondly, I just can't go anywhere with you." "Oh my God," she smiled, a man with a backbone. "You're not going to forgive her?" "No," I said. "Good for you," she smiled as she started eating her ice cream again. "So, let's talk about Hawaii again. What summer job do you want? What would be ideal?" "What I want is any job that pays above minimum wage." "What would be ideal is a job as an assistant or courier for an architecture firm." "Okay, buddy," she smiled, using the same damn smile her granddaughter used to get me to do what she wanted. I knew I was in trouble. Her words from the previous night came back to me, often imitated, but never copied. "If I find you that perfect job, will you come to Hawaii with me?" she asked. "Two things," I began. "Will it always be two things for you?" she asked. "First of all," I said, "I don't have enough money for such a trip, and secondly, I still won't go anywhere with Kat." "First of all," she said, "I'm very rich, I'll pay. And secondly, I want you to come with me, not with Kat, but instead of her." "But," I said, "all my relatives put up with me because I'm only 57 years old, so I'm too young to go to a nursing home. And secondly, they're all afraid that if they make me angry, I won't leave them any money when I die. If Kat or one of her cousins had gone to the concert with me last night, I would have had a terrible time and would have been home by 9:45. You probably didn't want to be with me at first. You did this for Kat. What did she promise you? After a while, I realized that you were there and we were having a good time because you wanted to be with me, and you didn't even know that I had money. You were testing me tonight, weren't you? Don't lie, I already caught you. But you didn't check my bank balance or my investments. You checked my 5th place in my chest." I looked down, embarrassed that I had been so easily read. "Don't be embarrassed, Ray, it's a good thing. Women love to be appreciated, so let's just go to Hawaii and have fun. This will help you forget my stinking granddaughter, and I can have some fun with a man who really wants to be with me for my sake, not because he thinks I'll die and leave him some money." "Okay," I smiled. Kat leaned down next to me, and I hugged her. "Sucker," she said. The next day brought more calls from Kat and even more from Mrs. Kat. She called me at lunchtime. "Hi, friend," she said. "Two things." Then she started laughing. "Is this the first time you ever heard of Nathan Johnson and his associates?" "This is one of the largest design firms in the state," I said. "You'll start there as soon as we get back from Hawaii." "Is $15 an hour normal?" she asked. "I don't think it's that much money, but they said you'll be happy with it." "I'm so happy," I said. "Thank you so much." What's in second place? I need to borrow your dorm room for about an hour tonight, she said. I gave her my address and just sailed through the rest of the day. I even got a call from NGA confirming that I would be one of their summer interns. Kat couldn't do anything wrong in my book. I filled out applications for summer internships at every firm in the state for all 3 years I was in school. I'd never received one. There were so many applicants and so few openings that even some guys who already had advanced degrees couldn't get in. I couldn't believe she found me one with just a phone call or two. I was so happy that I forgot to remind my RA to change the lock. At 7 p.m., Kat showed up with a big smile and a lot of bags. I hugged her so tightly that she almost fell. She just dropped the bags and hugged me back. Kat, do you need me to do something? I asked. Yes, she grinned. You will be my audience. Where's your bathroom? You probably don't want to go in there, I frowned shyly, looking into her puppy dog eyes again. I pointed to the door. She grabbed a chair and placed it about 4 feet from the bathroom door. Sit down, she commanded, pointing to the chair. Then, with her bags in her hands, she went into the bathroom and closed the door behind her. Oh my God, she exclaimed. I knew it was going to be bad, but God, have you ever cleaned this room? I heard the sound of shoes and zippers falling. I don't know if they were opening or closing, but I was nervous. Okay, friend, she called. Tell me what you think, she said as she left the bathroom. Catherine was wearing a tight red one-piece swimsuit made of a shiny material that seemed to shimmer. Despite its modesty by today's standards, the suit looked incredible on her. It had little spaghetti straps that held up the top. I didn't understand how she was going to swim in it. As soon as the material gets wet and becomes heavier, her breasts will instantly tear the straps. I need to learn Kung Fu, I told her. Why? She asked. I see myself trying to fight off a crowd of men who are determined to attack you on the beach. Does that mean you like it or don't like it? She grinned. She went from looking at my face to looking at floor. Okay, you like it, she said, walking back into the bathroom. When she appeared a few moments later in another jumpsuit, which was even smaller than the first, the temperature in the room seemed to rise. What do you think about it? She asked shyly. Kat, you're not wearing that, I said sharply. She arched one eyebrow defiantly. If guys see you in this suit, they'll only think one thing, I said. So what is it? She asked. Well, you know, I said nervously, they'll want to. So what do you think about it? She pressed. I didn't dare answer her. She came even closer to me, and I stepped back. She laughed and went back to the bathroom. I tried to think clearly. I thought about what I had just seen and reminded myself that she did have wrinkles, but damn, it was still the best body I'd ever seen. I didn't remember ever being so excited by seeing a woman in a swimsuit. When Kat came out in that blue bikini, I almost lost it again. It wasn't very risky by today's standards, but the body it was trying to hold on to made it very exciting. When she saw my reaction, she simply smiled at me and went back to the bathroom. I wanted her more than any woman I had ever seen. This one? She asked. I was so busy looking at her that I didn't hear her talking to me. Kat, I said slowly, it's time for you to stop. I think maybe I shouldn't go to Hawaii with you. She looked disappointed and walked toward me. But why? She asked. Ray, I'm getting old. I train really hard, eat right, sleep enough, and all that, but I can't fight against time forever. From now on, I will only do what brings me pleasure. All my children are grown, gone, and living their own lives. It's time for me to live my life. My mother and her mother were beautiful women, much better than me, she said. I laughed out loud. Stop lying, Kat. I don't think that's possible. Anyway, she continued, I think I had a plan for tonight, but maybe I'm moving too fast and have scared you. If you want, I'll go tomorrow and buy some more grandma swimsuits. I promise I'll buy them. Kat, you have it all wrong, I said. The problem is not with you but with me. Every costume you wore tonight only excited me, and soon I began to think about things that were definitely unpleasant and unfriendly. So you like my suits? She asked. I nodded my head vigorously. So what if we compromise? She smiled. What was on your mind? I asked. Well, how about we go and buy something more modest for the beach and pool, and I'll just wear the ones I bought today for you, she asked. For me? I stuttered. She looked down and nodded. I'll just wear them if we're messing around alone, for example, if it's a rainy day and we stay in the room and read or watch TV. Okay, I said shyly. You know, at my age, there are days when we stay at home even if it doesn't rain. She grinned. Well, I'd like you to rest. I agree. I'd like you to look at one more suit, she said. Somehow, during the conversation, we got closer. Kat, I don't think I can handle another suit, I said nervously. We almost had a big misunderstanding because neither of us was being completely honest. Let's not do this again, she said. From now on, let's tell each other the truth and not try to be polite or spare each other's feelings. Okay, I said. Kat, I really like looking at your body, but if the costume you want me to see is as revealing as the last few, I'll go in shorts. Much better, she said. This suit is older than all the ones I showed you today. This is what I most wanted to know your opinion about. Then she went to the bathroom. I felt safe again. First, if the suit were older, it would probably be less risky, I thought. Then I remembered a couple more things she said. Did she really say that on rainy days we would stay in this room? How will the two of us only have one room? Perhaps it was a room with a couple of bedrooms and a common area like a living room or something. This is probably what she meant. How do you like this suit, Ray? She asked. I was in heaven and flying high. I smiled and prepared to answer her when suddenly we heard a terrible sound. Grandma! What the hell are you doing? Kat squealed. She was standing right behind us, and she was angry. We were both so busy with each other that we didn't hear her open the door. Didn't you hear me? Damn it, she asked again. Exactly what the hell is going on here? I froze in shock. Kat, on the other hand, reacted like a lioness. She shook her head, freeing all that hair, then got off me and walked over to Kat. Why are you here? She asked her directly. I immediately noticed that Kat was not nervous or timid. Although she was smaller and without clothes, she approached Kat confidently. I've been calling and looking for you all day, Kat said boringly. Grandma, why are you without anything here with my fiancé? Kat said. A guy, I added. He never asked you to marry him. Ex-boyfriend. Don't forget that she left me. Kat snorted. Grandma, he still has all his clothes on, so nothing serious happened. I won't say anything to Dad or the family, but you owe me, and you need to stay away from my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, I said again. And Kat, we're not together anymore. Since when? She screamed. Since last night when we walked into your apartment and saw you having an intim with 3 guys, Kat said. Oh, said Kat, visibly pale. It was a mistake. It just happened. Don't be mad, it was just intimate. It had nothing to do with love. I love you, Ree. I don't like any of them. I just did it so Darren could help me with my grades. So you had a night with him and a couple of his friends for a threesome? I asked. At least it was worth getting a B+, she said. Ray, we can work this out. Don't get mad, it didn't mean anything, she said boringly. I'm not mad, Kat, I said. I'm relieved. Are you relieved? She asked. Hell yes, I said, walking over to my TV. Look, she said, walking over to my TV and seeing me take something out of the back. This was my best hiding place because Kat didn't care how anything worked. If something didn't do its job, she just called me, and I either fixed it or bought another one. Her eyes widened as I pulled out the box. Damn, I was so into this engagement thing that I was actually going to ask you to marry me when we graduate, I told her. It would be a nightmare. Now that I think about it, I'm sure you would have cheated on me even after marriage, so in a way, you saved me from a lot of heartbreak in the future. She looked at me but didn't say anything. She was still looking at the box. Thank you, Kat, I said with mock seriousness. If it weren't for you, my life would be hell. Imagine I'm married to a cheater who never loved me. But I love you, she insisted. We need to talk about this after my grandma leaves. We have nothing to talk about, Kat, I said. Have a good life. I crossed the room and opened the door for her. Wait until I tell Dad, she told Kat. I hope you do, Kat said calmly. Are you hopeful? Kat asked in surprise. It just didn't fit in her head. Think about it, Kat, she said. It makes my life easier and saves me money. This is exactly what I want. She paused for a second and grabbed my hand, pulling me onto the couch and sitting on me while Kat watched. Sooner or later, your dad, my son Thomas, will find out about Ree and me. He will be shocked, of course, but eventually, he will have to come to terms with it. I hope Ree and I will be friends for a long time. The sooner your dad and his brothers get used to this, the better for everyone. Kat was stunned as she listened to her grandmother. Besides, how will it affect you? Kat continued. Of all my granddaughters, I would never have expected you to be suicidal. What? Asked Kat. What are you talking about? Well, you're basically cutting your throat twice, Kat said. How do I do this? Kat asked, sitting down next to us. Well, when you run home and tell your dad, he'll call me. Like I said, he'll find out about Ree and me sooner or later. If it's earlier, then that's a problem for you because my old brain doesn't work as fast as it used to, so I can't figure out how not to tell him that you're using the apartment he's paying for as some kind of budget academic motel. I'm sure he'll be very angry when he hears how you spend your nights. You don't dare tell him this. Kat hissed. Yeah, I dare, Kat hissed back venomously. And believe me, I'm old enough to do whatever I want. No one pays my bills or supports me. Can you say the same? So you'll end up in a lot more trouble than I did, and you will create another big problem for yourself. Which one? Asked Kat. She had become much paler since she started listening to her grandmother. Well, dear, you will make me your enemy, so when I die, you won't get as much as you think, especially since you're my most special granddaughter and named after me. Okay, Grandma, I won't say a word, Kat said very sweetly. She stood up. Ray, honey, I'll call you tomorrow so we can talk. Don't worry, I told her. We broke up anyway. She left in anger. Are you okay? Everything is fine, I said. Don't worry. We'll have plenty of time for that in Hawaii. She smiled. Hawaii was great. I had never had a better time in my life. Before we even checked into the hotel or had an intimate, I discovered what Kat had known since her first night at the concert. Despite the age difference, she and I were made for each other. We had the same temperament and liked the same things. In the few areas where our tastes differed, we were both willing to make concessions and find compromises. There was one area where there was no need for compromise, the bedroom. We were constantly together. I was a young man with young needs, and Kat was trying to make up for lost time. It had been a long time for her, and she was eager to try everything she had read or heard about. There was nothing she wouldn't try, and it was very refreshing for me. I could really relax and be myself with her. With my granddaughter, I often felt like I was pretending or acting a certain way so as not to lose her. I didn't have any illusions with Kat. I knew she was completely mine, just as she knew she owned me completely. We did things that were illegal in some states, but we only did them with each other. We spent 3 weeks in Hawaii, and then I started my summer job at NGA. Mr. Johnson himself came down to the office to meet me on my first day. I worked tirelessly and was soon trusted with responsibilities that many other interns weren't. My parents were disappointed that I didn't come home for the summer, but they understood how important work was. I don't think they noticed the change when I finally told them that I was in love with Catherine. That's nice, honey, Mom said. You think she's the one? Without hesitation, I told her I was sure. What makes her so special? My mom asked. Well, Mom, I said, she is one of a kind, often imitated but never duplicated. I laughed, remembering where I had heard it. After hanging up, I realized that she thought I was still talking about my granddaughter. Catherine bought an apartment here in the city, and we had a big barbecue for our housewarming party. Catherine warned me that there would probably be fireworks since she invited her whole family. In fact, it was intended to be a dual-purpose event, to show off her new home to her family and to let them know everything about me. Naturally, Kat's family arrived first. Kat's father, as usual, greeted me warmly when he saw me. Her mother just looked at me. "Kat," she said, "honey, why don't you get the grill going?" Thomas and I moved at the same time. Thomas smiled and said, "Thanks for trying to help, Ree," but I think she was talking to me. "Thomas, you can help Ray if you want, but it's his grill," Kat smiled. "What do you mean, Mom?" Thomas asked, still smiling. Mona and Kat were busy in the garden, looking at Kat's plants and didn't hear anything. Catherine called Thomas to sit with her, and we talked. He was shocked. He really went crazy and started calling me different names. He blamed Catherine for finally falling into old age. Finally, Catherine calmed him down and said that perhaps he should go home and come back when he had calmed down. He gathered his wife and daughter and did just that. Luckily, his younger twin brothers and their families were more open-minded. Both Carl and Cal just shook my hand and started asking me questions. Carl's wife, Linda, was very pregnant, and I spent most of the day running back and forth, bringing her things. Cal's wife, Debbie, was very sweet and open. She was the woman who spat out her food when she found out about Kat and me. She surprised me more than anyone else that day. "You obviously treat Mom very well," she said. "I haven't seen her so happy for a long time. It's as if someone brought the breath of life back into her." She hugged me tightly and made me a friend for life. Kat, of course, really confused me. She pumped something into me, and she laughed. All her children were in shock. The grandchildren didn't understand it, but we had a great time. Everything was going great, except that her eldest and closest son simply did not approve of us. By then, I loved Kat so much that I would do anything to make her happy. I called Thomas and invited him to lunch. "Mr. SMI, what can I do to heal this rift between you and your mother?" I asked him before he even sat down. "Ree, this is so strange," he said. "I always thought of you as a sweet young man. I kind of expected you to marry my daughter, and the next thing I know, you're dating a woman who's almost 3 times your age. What's worse, she's my mom. How the hell did this happen?" "None of us knows when or where we will find love," I said. "I thought I was in love with your daughter. I followed her around like a puppy. I did everything she asked me to do." He smiled and said, "I remember. I remember her telling us that she was going to marry you. So when she asked me to take your mom to that concert, to be honest, I didn't want to do it. But I loved her so much that I agreed, even though it meant we wouldn't be together at our concert. We dated for 6 months, and that night meant a lot to me, but obviously not to her." "How could you say this?" he asked. "She was really upset about it when you guys stopped seeing each other. When I saw you at Mom's apartment, I thought Mom was trying to get you two back together." "Mr. SMI, what we're talking about goes no further. This must remain a secret between us," I said. He nodded, and I continued. "When I first saw your mother, I no longer thought that going to a concert with her was a burden. She is the most beautiful woman I have ever met. I was still in love, or thought I was in love, with your daughter, but we had a great time and got along very well. After the concert, she asked me to go get some ice cream, and we talked. It seemed like she really needed to get out and have some fun, so I suggested we go dancing. You know how it is with women and their shoes, she didn't have the right ones for dancing, so we went to Kat's apartment to borrow some. Unfortunately, we caught my girlfriend with someone else on our anniversary, and it broke my heart. This is what broke me, and Kat and I just became friends afterward. Then things got deeper. Anyone who spends time with us can see it, we really don't care whether people accept us or not. You are her eldest son, so your absence from us hurts both her and me. That's why I wanted to talk to you today. I'm going to be with her for the rest of our lives, so it would be great if you could be a part of it. Who knows? Maybe someday she'll leave me too, and you'll be happy. You'll probably leave her and break her heart," he said. "If this happens, wouldn't you want to be there to pick up the pieces and say, 'I told you so'?" I asked. "I'll think about it," he said. "I don't promise you anything." It took another month or so, but he began to come around. Kat and Mona never did, they always hated me. When school started again, Kat came up to me outside one of my classes and asked if I was done with my stupid summer fling since summer was over. I just laughed and told her that I ended my stupid affair with her a few months ago. I was seriously in love, I said. What about me? I love you, she said. I have everything she has, and mine are younger. Yes, but hers is better, I replied. Besides, I can trust her. You just have this fixation on gills right now. Sooner or later, you'll come to your senses and realize that you don't need the older version of me. Kat, you're actually a distorted version of her, I said. I need the original, the often imitated, never duplicated. Bleep you, she snapped. Never again. I replied. We had Thanksgiving dinner at Thomas's house, and Mona went out of her way to embarrass me and make me feel uncomfortable. She did things like setting up a nice table with place cards for everyone there, including her nieces and nephews, of course, but there was no place for me. Later, she made the effort to set up a small table off to the side next to their dog's food bowl just for me. Catherine, in her usual style, pulled it off beautifully. She sat me down at the head of the table and then sat on my lap. We fed each other throughout the meal, while Mona grumbled the entire time about how undignified it was. Catherine laughed every time Mona said something. Finally, Debbie asked, Mom, what's so funny? Catherine told her that Mona was deliberately trying to humiliate me and thought it was funny, but she only made herself look foolish. Mona choked on what she was eating after hearing this. Mona, how much money do you think I'll leave for you personally? Catherine asked. Come up with an amount for yourself. Every time you do something to harm, humiliate, or insult the man I love, deduct $100,000 from that amount. Mona's eyes widened, and she left the table. From that moment on, she was always very polite to me. She still looked at me with disdain, but she was very, very polite. Holidays, vacations, and special occasions were times when the whole family would gather, with the exception of Mona and Kat. I truly believe they all accepted me. Kat never stopped trying. The following summer, when we had been together for almost a year, she was still trying. We had a pool party to celebrate my upcoming graduation and my hiring at Nathan Johnson Associates as an architect. Kat came out of the gazebo in a bikini and approached me. What do you think about it? She asked. I think you missed this in your bed, I replied jokingly. Wow, I said, your grandma looks much better in a bikini than you do. I continued, her figure is much nicer too, and your belly is already starting to appear. Maybe one of the guys you're seeing got you pregnant. She just looked shocked. To answer your second question, I have to admit that you're right, I miss the comfort of being close to you. But only because when we were together, I could truly relax. You always just lay there, and with your grandma, I know that she genuinely cares for me. I can also trust her, she would never hurt me like you did. She glared at me. Someday, you'll regret not staying with me. Grandma is not eternal, none of us last forever. I replied sharply, so I will cherish every day I have with her, no matter how long we have left. And who knows? Maybe with all those risky choices you make, you might end up facing serious consequences before us. What do you mean, us? She said sarcastically. This may be the first time I've really been in love, I said quietly. But I don't know if I even want to live if something happens to her. You're just pathetic, she said, backing away. I turned and came face to face with Catherine and Debbie, who had heard most of our conversation. She's one spoiled little brat, Debbie said. Catherine didn't say anything, she just grabbed my hand and pulled me through the house. I'm sorry, I said nervously. I know she's your special granddaughter and I shouldn't have talked to her like that, but she really upset me. Shut up, she said. She grabbed her keys from the kitchen counter, and we got into her Jaguar. We drove about 4 miles from our condo. It's far enough, she said. I looked around and saw we were in front of a rather rundown motel. Okay, get a room, I said, looking at her strangely. Look, if you want to kick me out, that's fine, but I want to get my stuff and stay in a better place than this. I have a good job, I can afford the best. She threw her head back and started laughing. What makes you think we're here for that? Well, I lost my patience with Kat, and you're mad at me, I said. No, I saw how Kat tried to tease you and heard everything you said to her. What you told her got me so excited that I didn't want the kids to hear me, so we had to leave. Now, get a room. We returned to the party a couple of hours later, just in time for dinner. Apparently, Debbie told everyone about the incident, and even Thomas looked at me favorably. A few months later, Thomas and I met again for lunch. I hate to tell you this, he said, but you'll be shocked again. Please don't tell me you're leaving her, I said. I really didn't want to be right this time. No, this is worse, I said. Thomas, I finished school and have a great job. He laughed a little at that. I think he was annoyed that Kat never earned enough credits to graduate and would only finish in 6 years anyway. I love Kat, and I want to be with her forever, but what we're doing isn't enough for me, I said. Well, you're a young man, you can't expect her to keep up with you, he said. What do you want me to do? Help me find my mistress, I said, and his face showed shock and anger as he stood up. Thomas, sit down, I laughed. He sat down, still looking at me strangely. I called you here because the last time we had one of these conversations was after Kat and I moved in together. This time, I wanted you to be the first to know. He stared at me. Thomas, I want Catherine to marry me. This is not just about legalities, it's about much more. As you already know, I've been working at the company for about a year and have risen quickly. I've received several promotions, and while I know your mom is wealthy, we don't live off her money, I provide for us now. This is great because there will be more money for you and your children when the day comes that she is no longer with us. But I want her to be my lawful wife. You know the story about your biological father and how she never married him, which was a scandal in those days. I want her to experience what it's like to be someone's wife, particularly mine. I handed him a set of documents I had prepared, which stated that in the event of a divorce, we would both leave with what we came into the marriage with. I will not lay claim to her property. Period. Does Mom know about this? He asked. No, I wanted to warn you first, I said. You know she'll never sign this, he said. We all know you didn't pursue her for the money, What do you want from me? Well, I was hoping you would give me your blessing so I could ask her for it and help me find the ring, I said. You have my blessing, he said. Good luck finding the ring. I don't want to be part of choosing the wrong one. Try talking to Debbie. So I did. I called Cal and told him I needed to talk to Debbie. We spent a couple of Saturdays searching and finally found what we thought was the perfect ring. We then organized another barbecue for the occasion. Debbie and I were discussing the best way for me to ask Kat when all hell broke loose. Debbie, of all my sisters-in-law, I trusted you the most. Kat exclaimed. Get out of my house. Cal came over to see what was going on. Debbie was almost in tears. Thomas arrived too. Mom, this is not at all what you think, he snapped. Thomas, how do you know what I think? She began, then stopped. Kat, I said, you really messed up, sweetie. How? She asked, her eyes wide. I really thought we had it perfect. No, I've been thinking about this for a long time, I said. I talked to Thomas about this a few weeks ago. Cal and Debbie helped too, especially Debbie. Carl was supposed to organize it, but now it's all messed up. Can we fix this? She looked at me, tears starting to flow. No, we just need to do it now, I said. Catherine, I smiled, I love you. Will you marry me? Her eyes opened in shock as she looked around and saw that everyone was watching us, with even more people heading in her direction. Did you all know about this? She asked. He asked me for my blessing, Thomas said. He asked Debbie to help him find the ring, Cal added. I'm sorry, Debbie said. I was jealous, Kat said. Forget about it, Mom. What did you expect? No, Debbie said, looking around. I was crushed. Even Thomas was shocked. Well, maybe, Kat corrected herself, grabbing my hands. We'll be back, she said, pulling me out of the house. You already know where we went. She tried to kill me again, but she came back with my ring. Neither Kat nor Mona attended our wedding by choice. Thomas had to force them both to leave. Catherine, of course, refused to sign the prenuptial agreement as Thomas predicted. When I told her we couldn't get married otherwise, she relented and signed it, but then she immediately tore it apart. The following summer, we gathered together to learn some shocking family news. Kat was pregnant and didn't know who the father was. Thomas was beside himself. I took him for a spin in my new car, a silver Shelby GT 350 Mustang. We talked, and he told me how worried he was about her future. I assured him that I would find her a job at the company and look after her. This seemed to make him feel a little better. A few weeks later, we learned that Kat had lost her baby. Somehow, she didn't seem too sad about it. She returned to the life she had before. When I told her about the job, she looked at me like I was crazy. "I don't need a damn idiot," she snapped. "It should have been your responsibility to get a good job and take care of me like my mom and dad. Just because you married my grandmother doesn't make you my grandfather. So don't do it. Don't try to give me any advice. Just 2 years ago, you, like everyone else, begged me for intimate." "Which pipeline?" I asked. "I know Grandma gives you money left and right," she said. "I saw that damn car. It's not cheap." "Kat, I bought the car with my own money," I replied. "Your grandmother's money is safe in the bank and her investments." Kat just shook her head and walked away. "I told you she was stupid," Kat said when we talked about it later. "I tried so hard to love this girl and her mother," she snapped. But they continued to insist, first Mona, now her daughter. I don't know how much more I can take. For the first time since I had known her, I saw Kat upset. "Honey, don't let that girl get you down," I said. "It's not worth it. She's not worth it. Let's continue with the plan. I can get more free time from work. Let's do that." "If I didn't have you," she said, shaking her head, "you wouldn't have half as many problems," I finished for her. Her face briefly showed anger again, and then she smiled. I would be just another sad 60-year-old woman who didn't have love in her life. I would be another old woman put on a shelf somewhere in a nursing home, waiting for a family who no longer has time for her to die so they can divide her assets, she said. "Your children love you," I told her. "Oh, they love you too," she said. "Most of the grandchildren who are younger than you now call you grandpa." She laughed at my reaction to this. "Grandfather at 25 years old, What will happen to us?" she asked seriously one night as we lay cuddled together in bed after one of her long, exhausting marathon sessions. "What will happen to us when my body starts to fail and I can no longer have a night with you?" Kat trained like an Olympic athlete. Every morning, she went for a run either outside or on her treadmill. She did yoga 3 days a week and strength training 3 days a week. Her diet was very Spartan most days, although she loved to spoil me. At 25, I couldn't do most of the workouts she did, but you can only hold back the march of time for so long. Now it was my turn to be angry. "Kat, I love you," I told her, noting that I didn't say that I loved having a night with her, although I did. Our intim was amazing, but that wasn't all we had. My philosophy was that we would enjoy our intimacy until we couldn't anymore, and when that time came, we would still travel together and take long walks holding hands. We would find new ways to kiss, hug, and make each other happy. And when we couldn't do that anymore, we would sit down and talk about everything we'd done and seen. We've been together for 4 years now, and we always have something to talk about. I seriously don't think we'll ever run out of things to discuss. That's why it's very important that we pick another one from our awesome dozen as soon as possible and go there, I told her. "I don't think you like traveling, she said seriously. "It takes your mind off your work or the building you're designing. I think you only take these trips with me for 2 reasons. I started laughing and squeezed her tighter. I noticed that even then, she seemed a little weaker than when we first met. "So, what are your 2 reasons for every question?" I laughed. "Okay, Kat, what are your 2 reasons?" "First of all, you go on these trips because you love me so much that you would do anything to make me happy, and you know that I love to travel," she said. I nodded and told her it was true. "And secondly, you just like to take me to different hotels," she smirked. We both laughed and almost didn't notice the soft knock on her door. "Just a minute," Kat said, putting on a robe and tossing one to me. "Come in," she called. "Hi, Mom," Thomas said. "We need to talk. Why don't you get dressed while I talk to Dad for a few minutes?" "Dad?" I thought. This was something new, a 25-year-old calling me Dad. "Ray, I want to apologize to you," he said, looking at me. I started to respond, but he interrupted. "From the very beginning of this with you and my mom, I was against it. I thought you were just using her for money or something. You have to admit this is a strange relationship. I don't know why anyone finds this so odd. Older men with younger women are often accepted in society and even admired. I don't understand why people see it differently in this case. Anyway, after a while, I think we all started to accept you, well, most of us, anyway. I admit I still had some doubts, but I couldn't help but hear what you just said to her, and I felt bad for how I treated you. This won't happen again." I simply nodded as Kat walked into the room. "I'll leave you two to talk," I said. "Actually, I need you to be in on this too," he replied. "Okay," I said. We went into the dining room and sat down at the table. "This is Kat," he said. "I don't know what to do with her anymore, Ray. She's just a few months older than you. She turns 26 next week. Since the miscarriage, her life has been in a downward spiral. All she does is lie at home all day and go out every evening. She doesn't come home until 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. We received a call this morning asking us to pick her up because she was arrested for pill possession and public intoxication. You won't believe how she was dressed. Apparently, she also gave away her card during the night, and the guy she gave it to caused her some trouble. We are responsible for this since the car is in my name." He put his hands behind his head. "I've been trying to convince her to get a job for months. I even tried to get her to come and work in my office on weekends, but she can't do anything. She doesn't know anything about anything. I know she never got her degree, but she went to college for 6 years. What did I pay for? She can't even type. Last week, I went into the backyard to drop off a check to our lawn maintenance guy. He didn't hear me calling him because he was so busy looking at the house. I walked up behind him and almost had a heart attack. Kat was at the window, doing something inappropriate and pressing against the glass. I ran inside to get her to stop, but she just laughed it off, saying she was just having fun. I could tell Kat was trying hard not to laugh. What was she like at school, Ree? When did things get so bad? How the hell do we fix this? He asked. I looked at Kat, and she just shrugged. I tilted my head, and her eyes bulged again as she shrugged once more. Thomas looked at both of us and said, "Okay, guys, there's something you're not telling me." Kat saw the pain on his face and nodded at me. "Thomas, do you remember our man-to-man conversation that I swore to keep a secret several years ago?" I asked. "The one where you told me why you and Kat broke up," he replied. "This is the one," I said. "Thomas, I'm sorry, but I didn't tell you the whole truth. When your mom and I caught Kat, she wasn't with another guy, she was with 3 other guys. One of them was a teaching assistant in her economics class. I can't say for sure, but that's probably how she got through most of her classes without really learning much. Kat has always had a way with guys. To be honest, I did many of her assignments either with her or sometimes just for her. I think a lot of it is my fault." "What is your fault?" Kat asked. "I agree too, Ree," Thomas said. "So, you helped her at school?" "Many students use this in the business world. We call it networking." "It's not just about school," I replied. "Thomas, your mom and I talked for hours about how you struggled through school and got your degree in marketing. She's very proud of you. I did the same to become an architect, of course. They helped me. Kat got me that internship at NJA, which really helped pave the way for me to succeed." "She did something similar for me," Thomas said. "I still don't see it," I said. "It's easy. You and I planned what we wanted to do in life. We stuck to our plans and found success in our careers. We also found people we wanted to be with." He nodded, indicating he was following me so far. "Kat had a plan too," I continued, "but her plan didn't work. She didn't have a backup plan, so she just spins around right now. She doesn't know whether to try to break through or try something else. What was her plan? He asked. Believe it or not, I paid for her college education for the whole 6 years. Sorry, Mom, but I have no idea what she wanted to do with her life. Yes, you do, I said. She wanted to be just like her mother. Remember when she told you that she was going to marry me and wanted our marriage to be like yours and Mona's? Kat snorted and became very angry when she heard this. Neither Tom nor I understood why she made such an angry face, so we moved on. The question is, I said, how can we help her now? Well, we have time to figure it out, he said. My lawyer told me that if we put her in an addiction treatment program, we could keep her out of jail. I'll still have to pay for all the damage to the car and her fines, but keeping her out of jail is a big step. This gives us time to travel, Kat said. We'll meet again to talk about this when we get back. Well, I already have an idea, I said. Thomas looked at me, interested. You and I need to look at everyone we do business with who owes us a favor, I said. We are hiring several of these people to offer Kat a job, starting with something simple that she can grow into. We won't tell her it came from us. If necessary, we will even subsidize the work for a while, so the company she works for won't lose money on this. How will buying her a job help? Kat asked. The only thing wrong with this girl is that we've already ruined her. Well, this job will make her more independent, I said. We also hope it will make her more responsible and introduce her to a completely different group of people, so maybe it will keep her away from the party crowd. I love the idea, Thomas said. We need to find some places where she can go for interviews, then she won't think we arranged it. We can start planning as soon as you guys get back. Thomas was a little happier when he left than when he first arrived. Kat, on the other hand, folded her arms across her chest and was clearly angry. Honey, why are you angry? I asked. Ray, you're a great guy and I love you. In fact, you are the only man I have ever truly loved. You mean so much more to me than that guy who got me pregnant twice and then ran away before he could even ask me to marry him. You know, in those days, it completely ruined my reputation. If my dad hadn't been rich, my life would have been ruined. I already know that story, Kat, I said, hugging her again. No, girls like Kat's age are not mature enough to appreciate people for their true qualities, especially when it comes to men. They usually prefer athletes or attractive guys. Kat always did this before she met you, so I'm kind of wondering why she was with you. Now I know, and I'm angry. Kat told me a couple of stories that she had been holding back for a long time. After she told me, I understood a lot more about this family and shook my head. A few weeks later, Kat left the addiction treatment program and took a job at one of the companies we founded. 2 days later, she was fired. Over the next 3 weeks, she reviewed all 4 companies we had created. Thomas eventually gave her a job in his office, where she did virtually nothing, and that was the status quo for the next few years. Meanwhile, the years flew by for Kat and me. We visited all 12 places on our kick-ass dozen list and started a new list. We were very happy and very much in love. Kat was delighted with every new thing or place we discovered. We took thousands of photos and recorded hours of video footage. Then one morning, after a particularly intense moment of affection, it happened. It wasn't something most people would notice, but it scared me. The whole family was preparing for a barbecue, which meant children, grandchildren, and even our first great-grandchildren. Thomas, Kat, Mona, and I were sitting at the table when Cal and Debbie arrived. Cal came over and hugged Kat, and she called him Carl. Most people sometimes confuse twins, but Kat never did that. I was afraid, Thomas said. You keep an eye on everything and cook on the grill. Ray, you guys aren't going to attack the motel again, are you? He laughed. No, we're going to the emergency room, I said seriously. Honey, I'm fine, Kat said. It was just a moment. I'm going to have those from time to time. Catherine smiled. Jordan, do you love me? Of course, she smiled. I think we all know that. Then get dressed, I said. Seriously, if this is a trifle, you will have a reason to laugh at me. But we are going. A few hours later, Thomas called my cell phone. Ray, are you on your way back already? He laughed. Or will you stay until the motel closes? Shall I save the steak for you? Thomas, I'm at St. Mark's, I said. I need you to come here. Thomas arrived 15 minutes later, still wearing shorts and a visor on his head, and he was not alone. Debbie was with him and looked worried. She has a TIA, I said. What does she have? He asked. It's like a mini stroke, I said. Blood flow to the brain is temporarily disrupted. With a true stroke, symptoms may be permanent. In this case, it was only temporary. They need to do more tests to determine whether this is a serious condition or if it was due to stress or another reason. He noticed that I was holding her hand while she was sleeping. Don't worry. They just gave her something to relax during the MRI, and it relaxed her too much. She's just sleeping. He nodded his head. Debbie was already on the phone, relaying information to the others. We sat there for a while, watching her sleep. How did you know, Dad? He asked. I didn't know, I said. I just noticed a mistake with your brother. She never confuses them, and she just looked weird to me. It was very minor, but her coordination was impaired, and so was her speech. She said it was because she was tired, but I knew that wasn't the case. Damn it, he said. I didn't notice anything. Me too, I said. You two don't live with her. You don't talk to her or look at her every day. Do you know that I sometimes just sit and watch her while she sleeps for hours? I can't help myself. She is simply the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And you know she can't sleep with this chatter, Kat said, opening her eyes. You just had to mess it up, didn't you? I asked. I know why you brought me here, she said. Everyone knows I was going to sneak you back to our motel today and your brain's out. After last night, you were scared, she chuckled. You thought I was going to drain you completely, didn't you? Debbie blushed and started laughing. Even the doctor who entered the room and stood behind Thomas turned away for a moment. Doctor, could this be related to the attack? I asked. He smiled. I highly doubt it, he said. A healthy intimate life can actually contribute to your wife's incredible health and fitness, but eventually, we all lose this race. We would like to keep her here for a few days for observation and further tests, but I'm sure she'll be fine. Told you so, Kat grinned. Doctor, I want her to be moved to a semi-private room, I said. But sir, he said, your insurance will pay for a private room if you want. I know, I said, and I would have paid for it if they hadn't covered it. I want to put her in a semi-private room and charge us for a private one. He looked puzzled. So do Thomas and Debbie. Dad, did you have a tea? Thomas asked. The semi-private room has 2 beds, I said. She will be the only patient in the room, so they can charge us for a private room, so no one else will be housed there. So the other bed will just go to waste? Thomas asked. No, I'll sleep there for the next few days, I said. Your mother and I have never been apart since we were together, and we won't start now. He's just doing this to try to violate my virtue while I'm in the hospital, Kat said. I would never do that, Kat, I said. Why not? She asked. We did it everywhere. Don't pretend it didn't occur to you, I said. It definitely came to me. What do you mean everywhere, Mom? Thomas asked. Oh, we've done that a few times at your house, she chuckled. And in yours, Debbie. Where in my house? Thomas asked. In your room, I said. You were on vacation. What about my dining room? He asked with an irritated voice. 2 years ago, we celebrated Christmas at my house. The whole family was there. It was you, wasn't it? I lowered my head in embarrassment. Hey, at least we waited until lunch was over, Kat said. Oh God, Thomas said. I pinned it on Kat. I already knew you were doing this at my house, Debbie said. I thought it was cute. Kat was in the hospital for 4 days. I didn't leave her for a minute. We had to make some changes to our lifestyle. Kat had always been as healthy as a horse, but now she had to take several medications to prevent blood clots, lower her blood pressure, and for other purposes. At first, it was minor lifestyle changes, but over the years, they became more and more the norm. We spent every possible minute of every day together. Our love affairs never stopped, but we greatly reduced their frequency. Every day, Kat became more and more dear to me. We started a new tradition of having dinners at our house every Sunday, where Kat would complain to the kids about how I treated her. She loudly asked Thomas if he could set her up with one of the young summer interns in his office. "Mom, why are you asking me to do this?" he asked in shock. "Your father is getting old, Thomas. He can't keep up with me. We only did this twice last week. I think I'll have to take a lover on the side." Everyone was almost dying of laughter, especially me. There I was, as always, with my family around us, holding her hand. "Carl," she said, "can I stay with you for a few days?" "Why, Mom?" he asked. "Because I can't get any privacy here," she said. "This pervert even follows me and stands at the bathroom door. Sooner or later, he's going to have to learn to stand on his own two legs and let me pee in peace." Everyone was shocked by her words. I was sure she meant it as a joke. The part about me following her into the bathroom was really funny, but I think it was at that point that they really realized that she wouldn't be with us forever, and they would have to figure out what to do with me. Most of them realized that I had been with Kat for most of my adult life and had no idea how to live without her or the desire to do so either. In their thoughts, I was not quite 30 years old, but my life had already been lived. That night was the first time I had a fight with someone in my family. Kat fell asleep in front of our fireplace while we talked about old times. Carl and his family had already left. Cal and Thomas were in the garage looking at my latest Mustang. I scoured the internet and finally found a Roush Blackjack Special Edition. I paid almost 50% over market value, but it was worth it. Very few of these cars were produced. I heard a sound behind me and turned around to see Mona entering the room. Kat never came to family gatherings, nobody cared, and it was never mentioned. I rarely spoke to Mona, so seeing her wanting to talk to me was strange. "She's sleeping," I said, smiling. I hoped she would just walk away and leave me alone with Kat. "I know you are devoted to the old lady," she said, "but you need to start thinking about your needs. A young man like you needs more than twice a week. I'm sure if you called Kat and were nice to her, she would take care of your needs and would be happy to do so." Before I could get over the shock of her words, she sank even lower. "Kat thinks you like old ladies, so if she's right and you're really into older women, you might as well give me a call. Although I'm not sure you can handle me." "I'm not going to tell Thomas about this," I said sharply, "but I want you to go and bring him here. Tell him you have a headache and need to go home, or make up something he will believe. And from now on, when we have these little meetings, find something else to do. Never come to my house again." "But she'll think I don't love her," Mona said. "If Kat ever dies, I will make sure you get everything she left you," I said angrily. "Now go." Mona ran away like a scalded cat. I remembered what Kat had told me about her years ago, and I just shook my head. "Damn it," I said quietly. "You told her, honey," Kat smiled. "Sorry, Kat," I said. "How much of this did you hear?" "That's it," she said. "I thought you were sleeping," I said. "You still don't understand, do you?" she said. "Okay, let's try again. I love you, Ray Jordan. We are connected not by wires or gears but by our hearts. When Mona makes you nervous and upset, your heart starts beating faster and you warm up. This means that my heart also starts beating faster, and this wakes me up." "Sorry," I said again. She simply smiled. "I wouldn't want it any other way," she said. "But while you're apologizing, there are a few things you really should apologize for." She nodded her head, smiling. "For example?" I asked. "You should apologize for taking so long to grow up and meet me," she said. "I wish we had more years together. You especially need to apologize for the 6 months you spent following my useless granddaughter. That's 6 more months I could have had you. You really should apologize for being so timid and shy when we first met. That's at least another week we could have spent having a night. And I'd really like another week of those days when we first met." "Aha," I smiled. "Is there anything you missed?" "Ray, what I regret most is that we met too late for me to have your child. I love my sons and their families. We have a great family. but I would give anything but time with you to see what our kids would have been like. Over the next few months, Kat became weaker. I took a vacation so I could spend every second with her. We planned a lot of things with her and the family, many of which never happened because she was too tired. Thomas planned a huge party for my 30th birthday. I'm sure it was special. Everyone came, swam in the pool, ate, and had a great time. I missed it, or rather, we missed it. Kat slept through the entire party, and I just couldn't leave her. I started planning things around her being awake. There were days when she was very active and almost like the old Kat. On such days, she could even take a few unsteady steps. The only problem with those days was that she slept almost all day for the next couple of days after them. I always thought Kat would live to be a healthy 80 years old, but it seemed she had lived too much of a life for that. It was almost as if, in life as in running, there were sprinters and marathon runners, and the rest of us were somewhere in the middle. Kat was a world-class sprinter. I arranged another trip for us, which took days to prepare. This time, the trip was much shorter. Instead of flying to Kathmandu, the trip was much closer to home. Debbie and I dressed Kat in an absolutely beautiful black dress. With the exception of a wrinkle or two, she looked much the same as she did when we first met 9 years ago. Of course, her health had deteriorated significantly since then, but what we lacked in energy, we made up for in shared memories. We went to hear the local symphony orchestra perform Mozart. Although the musicians and conductor were different, the magic of the music still transported us back in time. Kat would fall asleep for a few moments here and there, but would often squeeze my hand to let me know she was awake. Thomas was waiting for us outside in his car. When I called him and told him that Kat was a little tired and couldn't walk, he brought her wheelchair. I took her to Cold Stone, and we got ice cream and watched the boats for a while. That's what we did on our first date. She smiled at me, a big tear rolling down her cheek. "You're so sentimental," she said. "That's why I love you so much, Ree." "I love you, Kat," I said. Thomas smiled as he watched us. I leaned down to kiss her. "Aren't you a little too persistent, young man?" she asked. At first, I thought she was joking, but then I looked at her face and realized she was not. She was still smiling, but her expression was off. I called Thomas and told him to hurry. He brought the wheelchair to us, and Kat didn't notice it. "Are you sure you love my granddaughter?" she asked. "I would never say this to anyone, but you have a nice face." "That girl is bad. Get away from her as soon as possible." She finally looked at Thomas, who was shocked by her words about his daughter. "What the hell are you doing here, you an idiot?" she spat. "Get away from me. How dare you try to come back into my life? You never called or wrote to find out about your sons." Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the incident ended. "I love you so much, Ree," she said, and closed her eyes. "We better take her home," Thomas said. "She had another attack, didn't she?" I shook my head slowly. He just looked at me strangely. "Yes, I admitted. I saw that she talked to you as if she didn't know you, Dad. She clearly thought I was a stranger. We need to take her home or to the hospital, Thomas. She didn't think you were a stranger, she thought you were her father. It's too late to take her to the hospital, and she's already home." "You mean?" He began, and I nodded slowly, patting him on the shoulder. "Thomas, you once said that you owe me a favor," I told him. "I want to use it now." "I owe you a lot more than one favor, Dad," he said. "What do you want?" "An hour with her before we call the police, the coroner, the funeral home, and the family?" "There are a lot of things I still want to tell her," I replied. He nodded and started making calls. I don't think most people would understand, but he did. I held Kat in my arms once again. No wonder she was beautiful, even in death. I told her how much I loved her and that I didn't think I was strong enough to live without her. I told her that I was already single and couldn't wait until we got back together. It seemed like an hour passed in an instant before I realized that Thomas was already next to me, and an ambulance stood nearby on the grass with its headlights off. I don't even remember how the car pulled up, but there were several people there. Those who wore hats took them off. They were all waiting for me. Kat's doctor came and explained her condition to the emergency technicians and the person from the coroner's office. They lovingly examined her and signed the documents, handing them over to the funeral director. They expressed their condolences to me and told me that my mother was truly a beloved woman. I didn't correct them. I think each of us copes with the death of a loved one differently. Over the next few days, I did a lot of stupid things. I went out to my car, Blackjack. This was my favorite of all the Mustangs. I was planning to go somewhere, and as I got into the car and fastened my seatbelt, I started thinking about Kat. That thought led to another and another until Cal left the house. "Dad, are you back yet?" he asked. Then he looked at me. "You didn't go anywhere, right? You sat here in the car for 3 hours. Why?" I told him what happened, and from then on, I had someone watching over me all the time. They were afraid that I would fall into depression and never get out of it. Several days passed. Actually, on the morning of the funeral, I realized what I had to do. Kat wanted a funeral so her family could see her one last time. Instead of burial, she would be cremated, and my journey would begin. The funeral was, as you would expect, very special. The service was non-religious. We all took turns standing and talking about our favorite memories of Kat and what made her special to us. Kat, of course, embarrassed herself and all of us by telling us how much she looked like Kat. I think she was saying this for my benefit, but I really didn't see any similarity between them other than the name. Kat's lawyer called us all together the next day to read her will. I didn't really want to be there, but I had to. There were things I should have done right. I saw Kat in the hallway shortly before the reading. "I bet you regret not staying with me now, don't you, Ray?" she chuckled. "Remember the marriage contract? You'll get nothing, and I'll be damn rich. Maybe after I have affairs for a few years to make you suffer, I will let you marry me." "I have my own money, Kat," I said. "All I ever needed from your grandmother was love." Kat snorted and walked away. Mona didn't say a word to me, she just walked into the office. Kat left Carl $1 million, and Linda, his wife, $500,000. She left each of their 3 children $100,000. The only condition for receiving the money was that they had to spend it. They could put it in the bank for a while, but Kat wanted them to use the money for things they wanted to do. She didn't believe in saving for a rainy day. She also left Carl $1 million and Debbie $1 million. Debbie became really close to Kat, and Kat saw her as the daughter she never had. She also left each of their children $100,000. Then the surprises began. She left an envelope for Thomas, her firstborn, saying that he and I would discuss his inheritance after his divorce. "What?" they all said at once. Mona almost fell out of her chair. Kat left Mona $5. She paid taxes on all other inheritances, and Mona had to pay 33% inheritance tax, so she only received $365. Kat left her special granddaughter a quarter. After taxes, Kat received about 17 cents. Mona and Kat were furious. "This is nonsense," cried Kat. "I want my damn money." "What a scam!" Mona shouted. They were even angrier to learn that Kat had left everything else to me. "We'll contest the will," Mona shouted. This woman was clearly out of her mind. I assure you that Mrs. Jordan was of sound mind when she made this will. She was persistent on many points, including her wishes for how her husband would care for her ashes, said Kat's lawyer. "But why didn't she leave anything for her eldest son?" Mona asked. "And what is this nonsense about divorce?" "Thomas, do you know anything about divorcing me?" "Today was the first time I heard about it," Thomas said. "I'm shocked by the way she treated you. It makes sense that Mom didn't leave anything for Kat because Kat is in trouble right now." "Yes, but she completely deprived me," cried Kat. "She gave her other granddaughters, my cousins, $100,000. I was her special granddaughter. I had to." "I bet it was all because of you," Kat said, looking at me. She called Dana her best granddaughter and Marianne her favorite granddaughter. "I said she gave each of you a little nickname to make you feel special." This was the first thing I had actually said since the meeting began, and it opened the floodgates. Everyone came up to me to talk about this or that. "Thomas, your mother loved you very much," I said. "You'll probably get more than either of your brothers, but Kat wanted to wait until after the divorce so your inheritance wouldn't be shared with Mona as community property. She wanted to deprive Mona, not you. Marianne, I said to Carl's eldest daughter. She came up to me and sat down next to me. Pat and I spent a lot of time keeping an eye on what her grandchildren were doing and what they wanted to do. You want to take a vacation and go on a big trip with a bunch of friends, and now you have the money to do it, honey. But your car is a death trap. I pulled the keys to Kat's Jaguar out of my pocket. Take good care of it and remember your grandma when you ride it, I said. She also loved to travel. I think you inherited that from her. Thank you, Grandpa, she said. I'll tell you all about my journey when I get back. Dana, your turn, I said. Dana came over. Kat was getting angrier by the minute. Dana, you recently got engaged, didn't you? I asked. She nodded. Kat and I talked a lot about your boyfriend. I don't understand him, but she believed that he reminded her of me in those days. To get your life off to a good start, I think she would want you to have this condominium. I don't want you to waste your money on it, so I'll pay to have it redecorated for you. Just choose the colors and furniture you like. Everyone was stunned. Debbie walked up to me, looking puzzled. Ray, where are you going to live? She asked. Debbie, I can't stay here without Kat. Everywhere I look, I see the things we bought and think about what we thought back then, and it makes me miss her even more. When I started to cry, she hugged me and stroked my back. Kat gave me a task, so I will be traveling for quite a long time. When I get back, I'll find a place for myself. Debbie still looked unsure. I told Thomas, Mona, and Kat that we would meet to discuss the will, Kat's reasons, and some things she wanted them to know early in the morning. Debbie said she would be there too. I think she decided she needed to support me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I knew tomorrow would be a hard day. Cal and Debbie arrived early in the morning to make sure I had breakfast. We set our meeting for 9 a.m. I told Debbie that Thomas would need her support in the coming days. Kat arrived at 8:30 because she wanted to talk to me. It was funny to look at her and compare the woman she was when we first met to the woman she has become. She was still taller than Kat had ever been. She dyed her hair the same color as Kat's, although Kat's natural hair color would have turned gray long before we met. But that's where the similarities ended. Kat tried very hard to stay in shape, but her breasts were sagging, and she had a lot of fat on her stomach. Although she was only 30, she looked much older, her face was covered in wrinkles, and her usual expression was a flat and tense mouth. She did not resemble the girl I once considered beloved, and she didn't radiate the same joy that her grandmother did. Kat was unique, and she would never reach her level. I was also only 30 years old and would turn 31 in a few months, but I felt much older. Kat walked up to me and reached out to hug me while Debbie stood next to me, protecting me. I'm sorry about what I said yesterday, Kat said. None of this is as it should have been. I guess I just can't let go of my anger at losing you. Kat, you haven't lost me, I said. You deliberately cheated on me and expected me not to find out. This is a different situation. But I was young and stupid then, she said. I expected you to be angry for a while and then we would get back together. I didn't expect you to fall in love and marry someone else, especially my grandmother. Why not? I asked. Well, because she's old, said Kat. Kat, when we met, you were more beautiful and in better shape than you ever were or will be, I said, starting to get angry. Well, we can start again, she whined. I'm still like her. I'm just a younger version of her. We even have the same name. You can call me Kat if you like. The money, I just want you back. But you're not like that, Kat, I said. Kat was unique. She was often imitated but never duplicated. She was the original, you are a pale copy. I'm not even sure you're a copy. By this time, her parents had already arrived. Thomas greeted me warmly as usual, but Mona just looked at me angrily through her red eyes. Well, we can get started, I said, feeling terrible. It felt like someone had just torn my heart out of my chest. Thomas, I said, most of this concerns you and me since Kat's will is not subject to dispute. The rest of Kat's net worth is approximately $7 million, about $3 million more than my money. Kat left your inheritance to my discretion. My intention is to change some of these things. Cal and Debbie definitely deserve more money. Kat was precise in the amounts she left to each grandchild. She wanted to leave them enough money that they could do whatever they wanted, but not so much that they could do nothing. We both want you to enjoy your money now while you can. Life is too short to keep things on a shelf waiting for a rainy day. My intention is to give you at least half of our total wealth and give Cal and Debbie more. Mona's eyes widened. She looked at me and finally smiled, but I continued, but I won't give you anything until you get a divorce. What the hell is a divorce? Mona exploded. Catherine hated me. She never loved me. This is just her way of deceiving me and not giving me my share. Mona, I said, you don't have your fair share. This is not the money you worked for, it belongs to Kat, and she could do whatever she wanted with it. Mona sat up, grumbling. Ray, do you know why Mom decided not to leave Mona or Kat anything? Thomas asked. Yes, Thomas, I said. That's why we're here, to talk about it. Do you remember when I was dating Kat, and she told you that she would marry me and our marriage would be just like yours? Yes, I remember, he said, smiling. It was a happy time for him. Do you remember how angry Kat was when we told her about this a few years ago? I asked. Yes, but I never knew why, he said. Thomas, your daughter never loved me, I said. I've never been her type. Nonsense, cried Kat. I was the one who wanted to marry you. I never stopped loving you. No, Kat. You wanted me just like your mother wanted your father. I would be a safe and reliable support for you so that you could lie on the couch and eat candy. In the meantime, you would sleep with everyone you met while I was at work, just like your mother. Mona turned pale and stood up. It is not true. What are you talking about? She screamed. Mona, Kat knew about you from the very beginning, I said. She had detectives following you for most of your marriage. Okay, I admit I had a short-term affair, she said. It didn't mean anything, Thomas. It was just a night. You're always at work, I was lonely. No, Mona, I said. The report is very detailed, but Kat says she might have missed a few appointments. I handed Thomas a thick folder. Opening it, he saw a list of dates, places, and times. There were hundreds of photos of Mona with different men of all sizes, ages, and races. There were photographs of Mona with several men at the same time. She looked away and started crying. I can't handle it, she said. I have a disease. I'm addicted to intim. I just need help. But it's just intimate, she said. Thomas, you are the only man I love. Thomas, no woman loves a man she doesn't respect. Mona doesn't respect you. Look at the date and especially the time. She entertained those 4 black gentlemen at your house last week. They left your house just a few minutes before you came home from work. It's almost as if she's challenging you to catch her. She wasn't at all afraid that you would find out. She has no respect for you, I said. You are just her ticket to a good life, just like Kat wanted me to be for her. No! Mona screamed. I'm not that bad. Things only got worse recently. Nonsense, I said. Thomas, how long have you been married? 32 years, he said. Thomas was shocked. He couldn't take his eyes off the photographs in front of him. Mona tried to take them away because she knew that the longer he looked at them, the more the images would be imprinted in his brain. Thomas, if this doesn't last long, I said. How do you explain this? I handed him another folder. He grabbed it before Mona could intercept it. He looked at several medical forms. What is this? He asked. This is a modern DNA test. The other paper is an old blood test from about 30 years ago, I said. He looked at Mona angrily. How could you? He whispered. Mona simply lowered her head. Sorry, Thomas, I said. You raised her, sacrificed yourself, and tried to be the best father you could. I hope you continue to help her, but Kat is not your daughter. Mona has been cheating on you since the beginning of your marriage. Mona began. According to these notes, I said, Mona has had at least 3 abortions since Kat was born. According to the magazine, the reason for the abortions was so that other children could not easily be passed off as yours. Thomas simply lowered his head. I think more than anything, he wanted to just run away, but to his credit, he stayed until the end. I think Kat knew about all this, and that's what she planned for me. That statement she made at that dinner was just a joke between her and her mom. She wanted us to have a marriage like the 2 of you. Think about it. In college, I was smart and hardworking. I'm pretty good looking, but I'm no Brad Pitt. There's no way a girl like Kat could be attracted to me. I'm sure it was the same with you. Mona must have been very beautiful back then. Why do hot women choose guys like us? This could only be for one of 2 reasons. Either they fell madly in love with us, which I doubt, or she wanted to have something safe in case none of the athletes she slept with became rich and famous, a good guy sucker with a good heart who will always look out for her. I've long suspected that one of the reasons Kat was attracted to me was because she had a situation similar to yours, Thomas. All these years, she didn't say a word about any of this because she wanted you to be happy. She couldn't bear the pain that learning all these facts would cause you. She just thought ignorance was bliss. But Thomas, it's time for you to grow up and accept your responsibility as the head of the family. So, she left it to me to make things right. Mona hugged Thomas and began to cry, begging him to believe that she loved only him. Thomas was still looking at the photographs and dates all this time. Kat was silent. I think she always knew that her mother was cheating on her father and why. I also think she was hoping to model her marriage to me after that, but the knowledge that she was not Thomas's daughter shocked her. He was the only father she knew. Seeing what her mother did from that perspective hurt her deeply. It turned her sense of self upside down. She no longer knew who she really was. I never sought revenge on Kat for cheating on me. I didn't feel the need for it. They say that the best revenge is to live well. Since I broke up with Kat, I have had a much better and richer life than she will ever have. I didn't just move on, I took it to the next level and never looked back. I went from a girl I truly loved to a woman I would love forever. Thomas turned out to be as insightful as his mother. He assured Mona that he did not want a divorce. He did tell her to start looking for a marriage counselor while she did this and began trying to cook better and dress pretty for him in hopes of saving their marriage. However, Thomas was preparing for divorce. He sold the house they lived in for $1 and transferred most of the money from their checking and savings accounts to another foreign bank account. He transferred ownership of Mona's car to her and stopped making payments on it. He then took a lump sum payment in lieu of his pension and quit his job. Again, the money went into his offshore account. Thomas decided that he wanted to complete my mission with me. All the travel I was planning to do to fulfill Kat's last wishes would help him cope with his divorce. The day before our flight to Paris, which was the first destination on our list, Mona had a rough day. She was served with a divorce summons, evicted, and her car was repossessed, all in one day. I thought you didn't want a divorce. Mona screamed over the phone that morning. I thought about it and decided this would be the best option, Thomas said calmly. I'll take everything you have. Mona screamed, right now my net worth is $0. Thomas said, in this state, we have to split everything 50-50ths. So, you get half of nothing. I reminded him of her legacy. Oh yes, Mona said. Since we have to split everything 50-50, I'll get half the money my mother left you, so you owe me $183. To hell with you. Thomas, you won't get anything, Mona said as she walked away. That was the last time we saw Mona or Kat. Debbie told us that they were seen in a bad part of town where they wore too much makeup and not enough clothes. She also said they had bruises. I think all cheaters get caught eventually, even if they've managed to avoid it for years. They also end up getting what they deserve. Both love to cheat, and now apparently, they will do it for money. I hope they can make money from this. Thomas was getting better every day. Traveling, as his mother loved, suited him, but not me. Kat's plan was for me to take her ashes and divide them into 10 vials. I was to take them back to 10 places we particularly enjoyed during our travels. In each place, I had to think of her and the fun we had there and scatter her ashes so that she could become a part of all those places that we considered special. After the 10th place, I had to find someone to fill my heart and the rest of my life. I think she thought I would be like Thomas, getting better at every place and every week until I could function normally again. I also think Debbie knew my intentions from the moment I told her that Thomas would need her support. Everyone wondered why she hugged me and cried for so long before we went on our trip. Each place actually became harder for me, and each day was more difficult. By the time we reached our 9th destination, the cruise on which this tragic story began, I could barely complete my tasks. Thomas made me a locket with a tiny piece of cat's ashes in it, and it helped me a lot to know that when this was all over, I would have something left of her other than memories. The last place on my list is the Alicia Cliffs in Europe. There is a legend that if you look from a cliff with a pure heart, you will see your one true love. Kat joked that she saw me while we were there. I laughed and said that she must have seen me because I was standing right next to her, like always. So the legend is true, she declared, laughing. The legend is false, I answered. How could she have a pure heart when she kept rubbing herself against me? I asked Thomas to hold my jacket as we reached the viewpoint near the summit. We climbed up a steep little path leading to the cliffs. Thomas was tired and annoyed, but he agreed. Thomas, this is our last point, I said. Debbie will probably start introducing you to nice young women when you get home, so you need to get in shape. I'm not sure I'm ready to meet anyone, he said. Thomas, one of the main things your mother often told you was to live your life to the fullest every day, I said. Now you are unhappy because you got rid of a woman who never loved you the way you deserve. This leaves you with the opportunity to find someone you love the way I loved your mother. You are younger now than she was when I met her. If you want to be unhappy, at least find a woman with whom you will be unhappy. I walked to the edge, and to my surprise, this time I had no problem with the ashes spilling. I watched as the fine dust was carried away by the wind, taking with it the last remnants of the bodily shell of my true love. I looked from the cliff for a long time. Dad, we have to go, Thomas said. It's time to go home. Thomas, all the money is yours, I said. Give Debbie at least another $1 million. We'll deal with this when we get home. He said, Thomas, I never intended to come home. I have a note in my jacket pocket, all my credit cards, and my ID. Thank you for helping me fulfill your mother's last wish, but I can't be without her anymore. I said this as I stepped off the edge of the cliff and into Kat's arms. We are together again and happy as always. She is a little angry with me, but I explained to her that I cannot be without her and remain happy. I would have ended up with her anyway, so I just closed the gap. She reminded me that she wanted me to find someone else. I simply explained to her that I would never be able to find another woman like her. She was often imitated but never duplicated. She laughed, and everything became fine. Now we look after our family, but mostly we just talk like we always do. We are now the same age as when we met, and we will never be apart again. Even in death, life, and especially love, continues. What do you think of our story today? I think sleeping with a teacher is beyond me. What was your experience? Let me know in the comments. See you in the comments.